What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. On today's episode, Daniel, we've got our last conference preview, the Southeastern Conference. We are going to go through the top storylines heading into the SEC in 2026. Every school's win total. We're going to go over, under on every team in the SEC. Who goes to Atlanta for the conference championship game? Who wins the conference? Who's our dark horse of the non-favorites? And maybe you're picking one, Daniel. I haven't seen your pick. Maybe I am. You haven't seen my pick of who's going to win the SEC. So we'll go through what dark horses are sticking out. On the top end, Daniel, I did want to mention, if you look in the episode description, you will see Pick Games with Us. We have made a new app. We're calling it the Extra Picks. It's a college football pick 'em for the season. Really fun. You'll pick 10 games with us every week. Winners and losers, but with confidence points, which makes this fun. Also a survivor game in there where you got to pick a team to win every week, and you can't pick the same team twice, and you see how long you can last. A lot of fun. You'll have head-to-head matchups. Anyway, it's all free, but we are going to offer prizes for the top 3 finishers. We have Daniel and I haven't really fully fleshed this out yet, but I think we're going to have the winner on an episode of the podcast. So that'll be like P1. You win. You can come on an episode of the Extra Point, but free to join. We'd love for you to play with us, pick games with us. In the episode description, the link's right there. Just type in your email. We're not going to send you anything unless you want reminders for picks. You can select that yourself, but you just get to pick 10 games with us. If you listen to this podcast, you think you're smarter than us, prove it. Sign up. We're going to pick games too. It'll all be on there, and you can say you should have your own podcast at that point. You pick better than us. So excited to have that rolling out. Daniel, you ready to talk some SEC football?
Dude, I've been waiting all summer for this. Let's do this.
Well, let's do it. Daniel, here's my first question as we get started with the SEC. Can the SEC get over the hump and win a national title? Is there something wrong with the conference? What has gone so wrong that, Daniel, it's been 3 seasons of the SEC not winning the national championship? What do you think?
Yes, it's crazy, man. I don't I mean, it's one of these things where for so long it just felt like a natural thing. The SEC's won this many out of the past 15 national championships or whatever. And so there was this rolling total, and if they didn't win it this year, it was the next year they won it and they got right back. Or there's several cases where 2 SEC teams were in the national championship game. So it got weird because, even the years that they didn't win it, they were in the championship. So, the first year with Michigan, it was like, okay, well, there's a cycle up situation. It was the last year of the 4-team playoff. Georgia was left out. They seemed very strong that year. They got kind of Alabama right where they wanted them, and then it just kind of played out to be Michigan's year. Then the first year of the 12 team, that's where you kind of start. This is, I think, where the narrative has begun. If I was going to point it out, it's the 2 years of the 12 team, but people are lumping in that third year because of Michigan. So the 2 years of the 12 team, though, I think have thrown people, especially this last year with Indiana kind of coming out of nowhere from a historical standpoint. So we'll see. But yeah, I personally think the SEC will come right back and win a handful of, 3 of the next 5 national championships.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think that, there's too many good teams and they're not going to stay down for long. They're going to figure out how, and there's so many good coaches across the conference. I think they're going to figure out how to navigate having extra games at the end of the season, having the extra game on the regular season. And it'll ultimately, whatever needs to happen that's going to be for the best of the conference will happen. But also, I just think that they just have had a bad shot at matchups recently. So you hit shuffle enough times, you're going to get certain matchups that are just going to lend themselves towards the SEC will be back. So it could be this year.
Yeah, I think where I land, we talked a little bit about this last time of which conference is better. We go and listen to that on our Big Ten preview. If you haven't listened to that one, which conference is better, Big Ten or the SEC? Again, I think it depends on how you define which conference is better. Are you saying which conference won the national championship? Because at that point, do you think the ACC was the best conference in 2016 and 2018 when Clemson won national championships? No, I don't think so. I think that Clemson was the best team that year. But then the next layer is, do you think it's the conference that has the most teams that can win the national championship? And if you think that, you no doubt think the Big Ten is the best conference. And honestly, if I'm looking at just a list of how many teams I think are on tier one of national championship contenders this year, I do think the Big Ten is the best conference as far as tier one national championship level contenders. I do think I would land there as far as how many teams are on that tier one. Again, I kind of defined it as like you just take the average power rating of every team in the conference. The SEC has been the best at that since 2007, including this year. So I think we're going to get into, and the reason I kind of wanted to ask this question, Daniel, is this is the first year of a 9-game schedule in the SEC. And I know the anti-SEC crowd is already on the fact that, you know, the quote unquote PR campaign that has already started before they've even played a ninth game, saying how it's going to be a bloodbath and everyone's adding a loss. I get the hate of pre-talking about it before it happens because, Daniel, it very well could be that 4 teams go 11-1 this year out of the SEC. You know, like it could happen. I don't think that's the case. I think you're adding a tougher game, but it could happen. So I think that's where the conversation is especially with the committee has not shown that they know how to properly rate strength of schedule. Hear me. What I did not say was, I did not say Texas deserved to be in the playoff last year. I don't. I think they deserve to be left out of the playoff last year. You don't lose to Florida. And you know, it wasn't because they lost to Ohio State. It's because they lost to Florida. So hear me right. I'm not an SEC simp, you know. But until the committee shows they can properly rate strength of schedule, I do think it's a mistake for the SEC to go to 9 games because on average, you're playing a better team in your 9th game. And again, they're the only conference that's required to play 10 Power 4 opponents, unlike the Big 10, Big 12, or ACC, because of those several SEC, ACC rivalries. The conference requires every team in conference to play a 10th Power 4 opponent. So they're only playing at max 2 cupcakes out of conference. So yes, I think the SEC can get over the hump and win the national championship. I think the big conversation right now is the gap between tier 1 and tier 2 in the Big 10 and SEC is very different. And I think the gap between tier 1 and tier 2 in the SEC is like this small, and it's small. And I think that the gap between tier 1 and tier 2 in the Big 10 is very large. And I think that only widens with the tiers 3 and 4 in the conference versus the SEC's tier 3 and 4. I think it's all more compact. And so I said this in the last episode. I think the Big 10 is setting their best teams up way better to go win a title than the SEC is. But that is a result of, I think the middle of the SEC is far and above stronger than the middle of any other conference in the country right now. And so it's apples and oranges when you're comparing strength of schedule, in my opinion. And it's, again, it depends on what you're looking at. You're looking at average power rating, it's the SEC, which I look at. You're looking at number of NFL drafted players. You can look at that in hindsight and project. You're going to land on the SEC as far as how many are you playing on your schedule. The average SEC team is going to play a lot more draftable players on the roster. That being said, Daniel, teams win national championships, and I think if a team is capable of winning a national championship, they're going to be able to navigate their schedule with 0 to 2 losses, win the SEC, and go to the playoff and beat these teams. So, again, I do think it's time to spot the ball. Let's stop talking about it. Let's go see if an SEC team this year can get over the hump and win a national championship. But I am not putting all my stock in who's the best conference based on national championships. Now, it becomes a 4th year in a row, 5th year in a row, 6th year in a row. Yeah, I think it's 2 different conversations. But yeah, you could say the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. And again, I would go to, I think the Big Ten is setting their best teams up for success the best. So that's where I land on that conversation, Daniel. But yeah, I think they can get over the hump. I think it could be this year. I think there is 2 to 7 teams that could win the national championship this year in the SEC. 2 of those being on tier 1 and the rest being on tier 2, but 7 teams that I think are more than capable of winning a national championship this year. Daniel, the first team we got to talk about, we're going to hit tier 1 first, right off the top. I mean, It's Kirby Smart. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. It's the back-to-back reigning SEC champs. It's the best coach in the conference. Since Kirby's come in, especially since Saban's retired, this is Georgia's conference. They're the top dog, pun intended, in the conference, and you can't start anywhere else in the SEC than talking about Georgia.
Yeah, we're talking about national championship contenders. If the SEC is going to do it, then yeah, you're starting right here with the two-time back-to-back reigning SEC champion, as well as the most recent national champion from the SEC.
From the conference.
You've got both of them right here in Athens, Georgia. Georgia's getting some love. AP just came out. They're ranked number 3. It's one of these things where, I don't want to say Georgia's been forgotten. I think there's definitely some of what Bama went through where there was a certain amount of fatigue with them being just a top-notch program and there being, national pundits who wanted to just do something else by picking a different team. Last year, that was Texas. This year, there was a lot of talk about Texas. The SEC media days showed that, while people think Texas can make the SEC championship, they did all have Georgia winning it. Basically, it was like at a 70% clip was the expectation. So let's look at the team, man. So you've got the offensive line. I'm always going to start there. They've got their center Drew Bobo back, who was injured at the end of last year, and may have contributed toward some of that lacking offensive production towards the end of the year. They've got 4 other guys who started on that offensive line all back. So you've got 4 returning starters. So that's going to be big. Obviously, most people are going to talk about Gunnar Stockton being back. One thing, they try to pigeonhole Gunnar. Last year, he had a couple games where he just went off and was maybe the reason or one of the main contributing reasons to Georgia winning. And then he had several games where he just kind of didn't fully show up. I'm excited to see that jump from year 1 to year 2 of being a starter. That's usually a big jump in college. And for him, for it to be this late in his career, being a 5th-year guy, that's really going to be big for him, I think. So excited to see what we get out of him. This tight end room, I don't think is going to ever get the talk that it deserves from the national media because they don't have a, Brock Bowers in the room necessarily. And frankly, who does? But that being said, this may be Georgia's deepest tight end, group that they've ever had. That includes the years that they had Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington in the same group. So definitely a big time group there, all elite blue chip guys that are all in that group. And they're all, I think, ready to help. We wouldn't be talking about Georgia if we're not talking about that Kirby Smart defense. The back end, which was a liability last year at the beginning of the year. Frankly, you had those early games against Tennessee and when they played Alabama that you just weren't sure what you were going to get out of the freshman corners. And now those guys are older. So you've got a good group there on the defensive back end. You've lost a couple guys, but brought in some key transfers. I have high expectations there. Linebacker seems to always be a strength for the Dogs. They lose C.J. Allen, who's a Butkus Award winner, but Raylan Wilson stays, and Chris Cole may be the best player in the SEC this year. Who knows? He's been kind of trending that way for a couple years now. So we'll see what that defense is all about. They vastly improved the run defense last year as a big emphasis. So we'll see. They got better as the year went on last year. It was not a great defense last year. They definitely had to kind of come together, but a lot of that was that secondary inexperience to start the year. So as they got better at the end of the year, they were swarming. They were a good defense. They went against some really good offenses, some really good quarterbacks. So I think that's also part of the contribution there. All in all, Georgia's a complete team. They got great special teams, great coaching. I think coordinators, they've got one thing Kirby talked about at media days was that they're able to retain so much of their staff. I think that's important in recruiting. That's important in developing players. They're able to do that at about as high as clip as you can go. And I mean, you and I, there's no secret, we're Georgia people are going to know the most about this team. Likely the biggest question for Georgia is wide receiver. It just is what it is.
Yep.
If those guys can catch, if they're going to be able to bring the ball in and be dependable this year, then I really have a hard time seeing Georgia lose, this year to anybody really on their schedule. But if they're going to struggle, especially early on, that's going to be where, if they're able to, if they have to force things to the running backs or to the tight ends. I didn't even talk about the running backs, but they got a handful of good running backs. I think they're going to be special if they're able to get any production out of the wide receiver spot. They've got some high rated recruits there. It remains to be seen. It's a lot of unproven. Losing Zachariah Branch off this team from last year, that you can't say enough. And Colby Young and Noah Thomas, at different parts of the year, those were the guys that really carried the water for this offense out wide. And now you're replacing that with a transfer Isaiah Canyon out of Georgia Tech. You've got Sokovie White in the slot, and you've got some guys like London Humphreys back who played well in the past, and some high recruits that just didn't really break through last year, and Talon Taylor and CJ Wiley. Will see them too. So very talented group, but we've got to see it. Word out of scrimmages, they were not as impressive as Georgia had hoped. So could be more there.
Yeah, Georgia, man. I think this will be the best Georgia defense since 2022. This is a 2 deep on the defense that has 9 former 5 stars on the 2 deep. And that's just on defense. Nope, I counted it wrong still, Daniel. 10 former 5 stars on the 2 deep on defense.
Wow.
Yeah, the defensive line especially. I know a big thing is in pass rush. Last year they ranked 114th in the country in negative play percentage. 2 question marks for me for Georgia: pass rush, wide receiver. And I'll say passing game. I'm going to come back to that. Pass rush, I'm a lot more confident in one of those being fixed. I'm pretty confident in the pass rush. I think that, again, there's so much talent. This is eventually going to hit. Kirby Smart talked about last year how young the team was, and they kind of brought everybody back on defense. This is the best linebacker room in the country. You could argue it's the best defensive back room in the country, and they're top 3 regardless at that position. So, again, this is going to look like a Kirby Smart defense. This is going to look like a Glenn Schumann defense. That's good enough to go win them a bunch of games, Daniel. On offense, you mentioned they fixed the running game last year. They put an emphasis on it. I'm confident they're going to be able to run the ball, especially with the quarterback. I think that helped open up the running game, is having a quarterback who's got good legs and is not afraid to take a hit. Probably takes too many, to be honest with you. Tight end room, dynamic. They're 4 or 5 deep at tight end. And I know it's Georgia, but this might be the deepest room they've had, like you mentioned. Yes, wide receivers. It's just I feel like it's been the continuous question with Georgia since the last 2 seasons have just been wide receiver. And there's the stat about Georgia hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver like this century. Terrence Edward was the last one. I also have a question about Gunner, Daniel, and it really is. I just want to see it consistently. I saw him in the Tennessee game. I saw him in the Texas game. I saw him in the Ole Miss game. That's got to be consistent. And I know he dealt with injury in the middle of last year, but that's got to show up in the playoff against Ole Miss. That's got to show up in the Georgia Tech game at the end of the year. Honestly, the SEC championship wasn't that great of a game for Gunner either. They just physically dominated that game. So I say passing game, in that I think Gunner's got to be better about layering the ball over the middle of the field. And yeah, the receivers got to get separation and win one-on-one matchups and catch the ball, Daniel. They got to catch the ball. So
catch it.
Here's a take I wrote down. I think Georgia's the highest floor in the country. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's floor year in, year out under Kirby Smart is 10-2 if you're just going record wise. And so, yeah, but as far as I think that's the way that they play. Even if they're not going to be someone how spectacular, they're, highest floor. I think I agree wholeheartedly there.
It's multifaceted, and it's coaching staff. It's the way they practice. It's how physical they are. It's just you're not going to get, Georgia's not going to shoot themselves in the foot 5 times. You know what I mean? You can outplay Georgia. They're not going to beat themselves. So, but I don't think Georgia has the highest ceiling in the country. I think it's the highest floor, but not the highest ceiling. I think that's my take on Georgia. Fully capable of winning a national championship. highest floor, not the highest ceiling. So I want to see it. You know what I mean? I want to see these are young, talented. They've got stars by their name, wide receivers. I got to see that production on the field before I believe it. But Daniel, win total's 9.5. You just said it. The floor is 10-2. This team's not losing 3 games. Yeah, I mean, I'm very confidently on the over.
Like, are they able to lose 3 games? Of course, everybody. Like, there's 4 losable games on the schedule. But like the way, what you're hinting on, coaching wise, like they lose a game, it galvanizes them to not lose the other ones. So the math just doesn't math. Even on a tough year, tough schedule. And, they swapped Texas for Oklahoma this year. They swapped Tennessee for South Carolina. So those are semi-even swaps. Oklahoma, Texas, a little tougher than Oklahoma probably, but you get them at home. So overall, I think it's a wash. I think the schedule's a little easier than it's been past couple of years. They do have a road trip to Tuscaloosa, but all in all, 10-2 is the floor.
I think this team, again, its floor is good enough to win 10 to 12 games. I think passing game is where you win games 13-15. And that's where I want to see the jump is 13-15 is the passing game. So that's what I want to see out of Georgia. Daniel, the other team to me, and this has been pretty consistent, this isn't new to us, like tier 1 in the SEC is Texas. Texas, Daniel, I think this is, on paper, this is the best roster in the SEC. You could argue on paper it's the best roster in the country. When I say high floor, high ceiling, I think Georgia has a much higher floor than Texas. I think Texas has a higher ceiling than Georgia. This is why it's all on paper, right? Here's what I worry about with Texas. Record on the road. All right, how they played away from home. 2-3 in 2025. 4 of those were one-score games, and 1 was a blowout loss. The 2 wins were by 3 points at Kentucky, 7 points at Mississippi State. How does Texas play away from home? That's a question I have for Texas this year. Again, this is 5-year average, 4th best talent roster in the country out of high school, number 3 rated transfer class in 2026. They've gone all in with this class. Number 4 as far as draft picks on the roster projected. So number 4 as far as NFL draft talent. It's Texas. It's Sark. It's a very talented roster. This is a top 5 just talent team in the country year in and year out. Since he's got there, it's Texas. Arch Manning. This is where I'm like, I think I've landed in the middle on this. To the people who have been like, he was terrible, he's been average. He's not nearly as bad as he's been described. He finished 2025 very strong. I think he gets hate for his name. Arch is a very good quarterback. I think all but like 5 schools in the country would probably trade their quarterback for Arch Manning. He's a very good quarterback. He gets another year as the starter under Sark. He's going to get the year 2 bump, same as Gunner. He's very smart. He's a very good quarterback. The offense is going to have a revamped running back room. Sark openly talked about the fact that they straight up cut guys. They bring in Hollywood Smothers from Kentucky, Raleek Brown from Arizona State. They bring in Cam Coleman to pair with Ryan Wingo. Biggest question mark for me, Daniel, on offense, offensive line. They were at number 82 in O-line push yards in 2025. 3 returning starters, 2 transfers. We just saw, it looks like it's not going to be as bad as it looked, but Gooseby, is that his name?
Yeah, Trevor Gooseby.
Injured in practice. Thought it could have been an ACL. Bone bruise, out 2 to 3 weeks. Sounds like he could be back for Ohio State. We'll see if he's 100%. That would be a big loss for the area that I think is the biggest question mark on this team, which is offensive line. This will make or break this team's ceiling, is how the offensive line plays. Defense, look, you bring back Coach Boom, you bring back Will Muschamp. And look, if there's something that, again, if you're comparing the 2 tier 1 teams in this conference, like Georgia and Texas have played 3 times over the last 2 seasons. Georgia's 3-0. And it's been because Georgia's been the most physical team. David Pollack mentioned this on Cole Kubelik's show, but he's like, they need Will Muschamp to go in there and say, hey, just so you know, when we scouted you guys at Georgia, we looked and said, they're soft. Like, we're just going to go physically dominate them. And they did in all 3 games. That's what won those games. You could argue Texas could have or should have won all 3 of those games, and they got physically dominated. So does Will Muschamp go in there and make Texas physical, make him want to go in a phone booth and fight somebody. Colin Simmons led the SEC in sacks in 2025. He's back. He'll be a top 10 draft pick. Tony Anthony Smith, rising star at linebacker. Secondary needs improvement from last year. Defense was number 97 in passing yards per game given up. They bring in 2 5-stars that are stepping up at cornerback, and Kobe Black and Cade Phillips. They added the number 4 rating transfer class to an already top 5 roster. They're number 6 in the country in returning production, and they get a second-year bump at quarterback. They do get 5 of the top 7 teams from the SEC, and they get Ohio State at home. And that's why the win total is 9.5 and not 10.5. Still, I think this is a better year, Daniel. I think they go over. I think Texas goes 10-2 and they go to Atlanta for the SEC championship. I shouldn't have given that up yet, but I think they go 10-2 and go to Atlanta to face Georgia in the SEC championship.
That's fine. I think it's good to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off with some of this. Ohio State being a home game, I think is big. Also, it's not Arch's first start. Or not first start, but you know what I mean, as far as it being his team, because he started the year before
on the road,
a handful of games. But that was something that I think that game being a 14-7 slobber knocker last year contributed to the narrative that he was not good. And then he had an injury in the middle of the year that he played through with his shoulder, affected his accuracy a little bit. So I think that there was a lot of that going on. And yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle ground with Arch. Not as good as what, some may say, but definitely not as bad. And that the year 2 bump is going to be big. My biggest note is Will Muschamp. I think that's bigger than adding the talent on offense. Personally, I think that the fact that they sent away a good defensive coordinator to get a great defensive coordinator, I think shows you Sark is pushing all these chips to the middle of the table, and it's big. Coach Muschamp, that's the thing. You're not just going to get some guy who's a good coach. It's like he's been a coach with the greatest coaches in ever, and he's also done it there at Texas before.
He's been at Texas,
famously named head coach in waiting under Mac Brown, left for Florida. And, he's been an accomplished head coach before. He knows Sark well. He can help Sark, he could support Sark in the right ways and also be the baddest dude as far as the best defensive coordinator out there. So I think he's what this defense needs to take the next step, where you turn that dial up of, hey, these are great players, to this is a great defense. I think that's going to be the difference here. Schematically, he's great. But I agree with you. I think there's a certain amount of culture that's going to be a big difference maker here.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting Ohio State at home, taking Georgia off the schedule, even though they have to play several of the top teams, those 2 things alone have me on the over pretty easily with Texas this year. And then, Gooseby, that was going to be a big hit because he's an NFL guy. He's an NFL left tackle.
Yeah.
And so him being missed that'd be a big hole. So him being back, even if it's kind of limited against Ohio State, but for the sheer, the rest of the year, you're going to need him in the long haul to be a successful team. I agree with you on all fronts. Big difference here. We're going to talk about Oklahoma. We're going to talk about some other teams here soon. Not to call anybody out. I did just call out Oklahoma. You're going to have to be able to run the ball in this conference to be a complete team. Them going to get Hollywood Smothers, them going to get Raleek Brown, I don't want to gloss over that. Those guys are going to have a very high standard they're going to uphold. So we're going to see them take the pressure off of Arch. Arch is going to be able to run himself, but for this offense to be everything it can be, for the defense to be as good as it can be, you're going to have to run the ball to be able to win these big games, because you're going to have to run it when everybody knows you're going to run it, not just when it's convenient for you at a high clip. So I think Texas will be very good, like we said, and those are my reasons. I've got them over as well.
Love it. Daniel,
after that, we're jumping to the next tier. Are we calling it the next tier? I think probably 1A, 1B.
Again, I think pretty consistently it's Georgia and Texas in tier 1 and a big chunk in tier 2. And I think where you draw the line at tier 2 would be interesting. But I think you got to go with the team that went to the semifinal first.
Yes. So Ole Miss, they're such an interesting team. Lightning rod of attention. obviously the whole Lane Kiffin saga played out. He built such a strong program from where it was as a pretty good, you know, SEC program to someone who has bigger dreams and aspirations. So that was the big dichotomy, is like he built it to this power and then left because he had basically reached its ceiling potentially, or there's a lot of layers to that, him leaving for LSU, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But man, he still left it better than he found it, and so it's definitely a great situation to take over for Pete Golding. Trinidad Chambliss remaining as the quarterback, that's in and of itself, that's the biggest thing you're going to have for Ole Miss. Hey, you're going to try to improve a lot of areas, but having quarterback figured out with a guy who could take over a game and has done it before in the SEC, he's won at the highest level. That's huge. That's irreplaceable. Pair that with the best running back in the conference, Kewan Lacey, coming back, touchdown machine, 1,500 yards last year. I don't think that there's a better tandem in the conference between quarterback and running back. That being said, there's so much to replace out wide. You're wondering what the offensive play calling is going to do because, mind you, even though they lost Kiffin last year, they were still able to keep Charlie Weiss Jr. and a majority of the offensive staff. Even though there was a lot of hot and cold back and forth with that whole exit for them, ultimately the cooler heads prevailed and they were able to coach those kids and try to give them a chance. And they did. They beat Tulane like a drum. They came in, they were down to Georgia. They came back and beat them. They got to the next round. So they won 2 playoff games with Pete Golding as the interim coach. But you got to wonder how much of it was that offensive staff that was still in place. This is going to be huge to see what, the residual of that is. There's going to be some sort of a regression, you've got to think, because of, it's a new head coach. Even though he coached those last couple of games, this is his team. This is his coordinators that he's selected, John David Baker as OC now. And then also him relinquishing his defensive coordinator duties. He still called the game towards the end of last year. This is going to change. So all of those things are what I'm looking at. The brass taxes, they've got 10 returning starters, 5 on offense, 5 on defense, a good team that can be great. I think they're in that upper tier. Schedule-wise is what's going to kill them out of conference. I mean, Louisville is an excellent game to start with. It's so fun to watch as a fan. That's going to be tough. I think that's in Nashville. That's the Nashville kickoff game. And then obviously that game everybody's circling, College Game Day, is going to be there against LSU. That's very tough. Something people aren't paying a whole lot of attention to, I guess, the more casual fans wouldn't, but at Florida is a big deal, and that's right after LSU. That's a typical letdown spot. Florida's going to be just raring to go right there in Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. It's early enough where Florida won't have 2 losses at that time, so they should be able to, really give it to them. And, you've got Texas on the schedule at Texas. They have Georgia. Like, they have to play at Oklahoma. That's a rough stretch there. They have to play 4 of the top 5 SEC teams, and they're the other of that team. So I'm concerned for them in that stretch. I think that's going to cause them to regress ever so slightly. Their win total is 7.5. It's one of those things where we've gotten so used to seeing them at that 10, 11 win threshold because of Lane Kiffin. It's going to be one of these moments where, hey, a little bit of regression and a little bit, tough schedule, tough SEC schedule. Both of those things can contribute, where 7.5, that's a tough number to look at if you're an Ole Miss fan after what y'all have just gone through. I think it's over. I'm still there with you, but it's going to be a battle to be there. It's not going to be a given. This is a year that it will kind of test the guts, and maybe it's a seamless transition. I kind of think it's going to be a grind for a few of those weeks.
You going over under?
I'm going over 7.5. I think they're an 8-9 win team.
Yeah, this is where with Ole Miss, So this is the team I told you earlier that the team I flipped on. I put a game in another direction. No, I told you the wrong one. Sorry. I flip flopped on a couple of these tier 2 teams where I flipped one into the playoff and one out of the playoff today. Ole Miss was the one I flipped into the playoff today. I think you can do so much with a good quarterback, and I think you could argue coming into the season, Trinidad Chambliss is the best quarterback in the country. He does things off script that you can't coach and drives you nuts as a defensive coordinator. Yeah, I agree with you. Probably the best running back quarterback combo in the country. Wide receiver, Alexander and Cunningham. Offensive line's a question, but Daniel, defensive line's not. They have a top 3 defensive line in the SEC. I think they bring a ton back on the defensive line. A good quarterback and a good defense can take you far. Defense should be seamless with Golding still there. Even if offense takes a step back, who's the OC they hired? It was the guy who was the co-OC with Weiss in 2023.
John David Baker?
He basically he said it'll be 80% the same, 20% some changes that better fit like year 2 of Trinidad. And I'm like, okay, this roster is very good. I know the schedule is tough, but again, like Daniel, let's say I think they're beating Louisville, but they get LSU at home. They got to go to Florida, but again, they play at Florida early. What does Florida look like early under the new coach? Yeah, it's a road game, but again, you're the team with the experienced defense and the experienced quarterback on the road. You go to Vandy, you get Missouri at home. You go to Texas October 24th. You get Georgia at home. Like Texas, Auburn, Georgia, Oklahoma. That's a tough 4-game stretch. Can you split those? Can you LSU, add that to the list? Can you go 3-2 in those games? I think they can. 3-2 gets me to 10-2. It's interesting seeing the win totals this year for the SEC because they're half a game to a full game lower than they have been in years past. Like these look a lot
conference schedule,
right? And these all look a lot more normal. If you're like Georgia 10.5, Texas 10.5, Ole Miss 8.5, that looks pretty normal. Oklahoma 8.5, LSU 9.5, Alabama 9.5, 10.5, 10, whatever. 7.5 seems real low. I was confidently on the over before at 9-3. Daniel, I think it's the playoff team. I think they're that last SEC team in the playoff this year. I'm confidently on the over. I believe in Ole Miss. I think you can do a lot with a good defense and a really good quarterback. And again, if the offensive line takes some time to get around, you got a really good running back there to hand the ball to help your offensive line with the run game. So I'm a believer in Ole Miss this year. All right. From Ole Miss to, what a natural transition. Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss to go to LSU. Daniel, Lane Kiffin was the best coach in Ole Miss history. Full stop. Period. No one accomplished what he accomplished at Ole Miss. And I think in the midst of the drama, and dude, Lane Kiffin's like the Andy Bernard on The Office. They're like, oh, I hate drama. And he's like, I love drama. Like, that's Lane. Like, he's I just hate being in the news. And he's like, no, you don't. You freaking love being in the news. You love drama, Lane. Beyond all of that, best coach in Ole Miss history. No one's accomplished more at Ole Miss than Lane Kiffin has. He built the playoff team. I know Golding coached the last 2 games. He built the playoff team that got there. I'm not going to be like, oh, he developed Trinidad. He identified the talent that no one else saw and said, come to Ole Miss. He's an elite offensive mind. They play fast. Their offense is fast. They ranked number 5 in tempo last year. They use space and mismatches. He's unbelievable. Number 1 transfer class this year. Again, this is one of those. Signetti's ruined it for everyone because now people expect success in year 1. And he's not the only one. Other coaches have come in and had success in year 1. No one like Signetti in the first 2 years at a place like Indiana. I think an outlier. But because of the portal, now people expect success in year 1. Here's the thing. LSU spent for it. This is on top of an already good talent roster. They bring in the number 1 transfer class, and they signed the best quarterback, offensive tackle, and edge player out of the portal. According to NFL money standards, that's the best. It's the most important 3 positions. Quarterback, offensive tackle, edge. Offense, 6 straight years of top 20 offenses at Ole Miss. Only other teams to do that in that span would be Ohio State, Oregon, and Louisville. Sam Levitt, I have questions on. He was a very good quarterback 2 years ago when he helped Arizona State on their playoff run. Last year, this is a player who was up and down but injured. Wide receiver, running back, you got Barry back. He's a former 5-star. Offensive line and quarterback, Daniel. That's my question on offense. Wide receiver, full of transfers, fully loaded. Jace Brown from Kansas State, Eugene Wilson from Florida, Winston Watkins from Ole Miss. Corey Barber, incoming 4-star freshman. Trades Green, preseason All-American at tight end. But again, offensive line, you bring in transfers, they've got to click. Jordan Seaton, number 1 tackle out of the portal. Baugh from Maryland. Was he originally at Georgia? Or was he a Georgia commit? Okay, that's what I thought. So he's a former FCC guy. He comes in. It's got to work. And Sam Levitt, I want to see it. I want to see 2024 Sam Levitt at his best. He's capable of leading this team to a national championship. I do believe that. Defense, I think the biggest recruit on defense was retaining Blake Baker at defensive coordinator. This was a top 15 defense in the country last year, despite the on-field performance, because the offense was abysmal. It's kind of like they flipped. In 2023, they had the Heisman Trophy winner.
Terrible.
And a terrible defense. Then they flipped. Last year, they had a really good defense, and the offense couldn't run or pass the ball. It's kind of hard to field an offense. Can't do either of those.
Exactly.
They return a ton on the back seven on the defense. Plus, they bring in 4 SEC starters as transfers in the defense. DJ Pickett's poised to have a breakout year. We're at number 5. Linebacker should be set. Whit Weeks, captain. He's going to call the defense. Number 1 edge recruit, freshman, but good to have because, again, those don't grow on trees. Lamar Brown, 5-star. People view this team as college football playoff or bust, and I think part of that is Lane's personality. Part of it is the money that they spent. And guess what? It's 2026. That's fair because this is LSU. When you left Ole Miss for LSU, you did it because the expectation's higher, because LSU has a higher ceiling as a program than Ole Miss does. They need to start 3-1. Let the offensive line come into form or coach around it, but they got to start 3-1 because the back half of the schedule is tough. How good can the offense be, Daniel? This was like in the Power 4, like a bottom 10 offense in Power 4 last year. Can they be top 20? Can they be top 10? Look, I know Lane Kiffin's had a long coaching career. I'll say since becoming a coordinator at Bama to now, I can confidently say I trust Lane Kiffin on that side of the ball. And you retain Blake Baker and a lot of your defense, plus bring in 4 SEC starters as transfers. I think they go 3-1 in November. They have a big road game at Tennessee. I think that game could make or break their playoff run. Daniel, Lane Kiffin's going to the playoff in year 1. You know how I feel about LSU. And I was already looking at Lane. We said this on the podcast last year. Mid-season, I'm like, look, all this Lane stuff to Auburn or what Florida, whatnot is fun. But if LSU opens up like that, that's the one. That would be interesting. I think they do it in year 1. I think they go to the playoff. I think there's a playoff team in year 1.
I hate we were robbed of this being a possibility when Saban was at Alabama, because Saban at Alabama with Lane at LSU would be just
and Kirby at Georgia.
Cinema.
I mean, come on,
unbelievable. It's one of those things. I truly, because there was a time when LSU had come open, and I was like, man, Lane goes there, and it didn't work out with when Brian Kelly took the job. All that to be said, the LSU is like an SEC blue blood, if you could say that. I mean, you can win national championships there. The last 3 head coaches other than Brian Kelly, 3 of the last 4 head coaches have won national championships there. So you've got all that going. As far as this team, I agree with you to a certain extent. This is just it's a tough schedule. Opening with Clemson at home is big rather than playing them on the road. That Ole Miss game is going to be just so fun. A&M we're going to talk about in a minute. Extremely tough game, but getting that Tiger Stadium is huge. At Auburn, don't sleep on that. But I'm looking at this. These are great transfers that they've brought in. I'm not all the way in on Sam Levitt, but I can be persuaded. I'm excited to
with you
see
for
him.
what it's worth. Yeah.
I'm excited to see him in this Lane offense. And that's the thing. Your description of the dichotomy of the past 2 seasons. Second time I used dichotomy, I gotta stop. Already on the show, so I'm aware of that. Everybody, if you've heard me say it, I am sorry.
Self-aware.
But 2024, you have Jaden Daniels and just the insane offense. I mean, but they couldn't stop anybody. And so you think you fixed it by bringing in, Blake Baker, and you did. But unfortunately, Jaden Daniels is gone, and you're also not. I guess was that. Yeah. Then he just was
Yeah,
not.
he was 24 when he came in, so he had 2 years, and he turned it from. I mean, flipped the defense in 2 years.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that they couldn't pair the good offense with the good defense, and of course they keep Baker, like you said, and it's like, if they're able to keep the defense as good as that they were and just get a little life on offense, things could change really quickly. But this is LSU. The expectations are high. The line for them is 8.5. Are they an 8-4 team or are they a 9-3 team? Are they better? Are they 10-2? I am concerned about later in the year, but like the games that I'm concerned about, like Alabama and Texas, getting them at home.
Huge.
Like, you're not just talking about home field advantage. You're talking about LSU home field advantage with the excitement of a new coach. And like you said, as long as they don't start slow, as long as they don't start with 2 losses early, then I think you're going to have extreme buy-in from the crowd and the fans. It's always tough to play at LSU. And so you've got those games late against some good opponents. Now, it is tough that Lane's got to visit 2 X's this year, with both visiting Ole Miss and visiting Tennessee. But I guess those are bridges you've burned, and it is what it is. But I'm high enough on LSU to go over. I'm maybe not as optimistic as you've portrayed about potentially being a playoff team. They're a potential playoff team, absolutely. But I'm more like that right at 9-3. I think is a good spot for them this year. So I'm over, and I'm excited to watch what we're about to see at LSU.
I mean, this is where there is a very real possibility where you have like Georgia, Texas 10-2, and then 6 teams at 9-3. I mean, it is a very real possibility that you just have. I mean, you're splitting hairs between. I mean, especially between LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Alabama, Oklahoma. Like, if they just kind of round robin them playing each other, and then they jump up and get a Georgia or a Texas, and then a South Carolina, Auburn, Florida jumps up and gets them. I mean, you could just have a big old 9-3 glob and create a lot of problems come playoff committee. Anyway, yeah, we're splitting hairs here. Okay. Daniel, a team that went to the playoff last year, had an elite defense, Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners. They got a rematch with Alabama, lost that rematch in the first round of the playoff. Daniel, they after Mateer's injury, they struggled to move the ball, but it wasn't just him. They really couldn't run the ball last year. Defense was one of the best defenses in the country. How are we looking at Oklahoma this year?
I want Oklahoma fans to hear this. I'm going to start with this. Oklahoma's going over this year. All right.
But what's that win total?
Win total. I have them going over. All right. I'm positive that they're going to go over. That being said, look, this defense is going to be one of the best ones in the conference, and that alone is going to help them raise the floor in a lot of these games. So a lot of these games of teams that are close to them, they're going to be able to either be, right there in the game at the end with a chance to win, or these teams that are just inferior, they're not going to have a chance at beating them because the defense is going to put them in that situation. That being said, this is a very tough schedule. This is not about Oklahoma. I'm not trying to make this but at Michigan being, one of your non-conference games, you got them at home last year. You're going to the big house for whatever it's worth. That's a tough game. You've got at Georgia as your first SEC matchup. You've got Texas in your normal, Red River shootout in the Cotton Bowl. And then you've got, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Kentucky. It is a run-of-the-mill SEC teams, they're going to be tough, but you should be able to beat them no problem because of, like I said, that defense. You get to that later part of the schedule at Florida, to me, is a tough situation. I know I've been throwing flowers to Florida. I hate to do it, but on the road at Florida is never easy. Texas lost there last year. I mean, it just is what it is. It's a tough place to be. They lost there with a coach that was about to get fired. So, but you get Ole Miss and A&M at home at the end of the year, but those are tough games as well. So you mix it all together. I mean, they're playing the top two teams in Georgia and Texas in the conference. They're playing two of the upper echelon with Ole Miss and A&M, and then you've got a road game at Michigan. I'm thinking you split those. I'm thinking you're looking at 8-4 to 9-3. I'm going to lean 9-3 because I want to be optimistic with them, but 8-4 to me, I think is a very realistic. It's a great line. I think the better line would have been 8.5 because I do think they're a little bit better. Where it's 8-4 or 9-3 is where I'm at. So I'm an easy over, but it's because of the defense. The schedule is keeping me down. I don't think they're a 10-win team this year. It largely is about the running game. You mentioned it in the open on them. To win the SEC, I mentioned Texas earlier. You're going to have to run the ball. And for you to be that upper echelon, I mean, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, I feel like all of them can run the ball. LSU, I've got questions about their running game. And Oklahoma, I've got major questions based on what we saw last year. Oklahoma's known for having a good offensive line. They were not that great last year in the run game. And then this year, they're playing some younger guys. We're going to see if they can improve on that. And, they've won the Joe Moore Award a few years ago. So, they're traditionally a good running team. Maybe that's been a focus for them this offseason. It should have been. And maybe they're able to improve. If they improve that, to me, they're a dark horse. They're a playoff team. They're a 10-win, type of team, even with this schedule.
Yeah. I mean, last year we were talking about the fact that Oklahoma had the toughest schedule in the country. And it didn't matter because Oklahoma was good. They went and won 10 games and were hosting a playoff game. I don't see it this year, Daniel. And I look at the win total at 7.5, and I'm like, well, Vegas clearly doesn't see it. And when I have a lot of question marks, and same with you, I'm like, is this like a 9 or 10 win team or an 8-win team? And Vegas is like, well, the win total is 7.5, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
like, okay, because I'm sitting here going to be in like, okay, you know what? I might catch heat for this, but I'm lower in Oklahoma. I think they're like an 8-4 type team. Like I get the 7.8 wins. And then I saw the Vegas win total, and I was like, oh, that means I'm on the over. I thought I was low on Oklahoma.
Slightly, yeah.
And I'm on the over. You know what I mean? Slightly, but still I'm like, oh, okay, like so I'm not as low as Vegas is in Oklahoma.
So you're
I'm
high
pretty
on
optimistic.
Since you're on the over, just like me.
I do not trust that OU's fixed the offense. They were 4-1 in one-score games last year. How do you fix the run game without an elite offensive line and without a proven running back? Do you do it with John Mateer and his legs? You can. It's definitely, that can open it up. But how do you do that without an elite offensive line? Beyond the hand injury, I thought John Mateer had a tough time reading a defense. And at this point, Daniel, I think we know what John Mateer is. This is not a second-year college football starter. This is a fourth-year college football starter in John Mateer. So we've seen him at
closer
multiple
to
stops.
A finished product than raw talent.
That's right. And so I don't think we get this giant jump with John Mateer. I think we kind of know what he is. This defense and this team is good enough to win 8 games, and that's why I'm on the over. But I think this is more likely to be an 8-4 team than a 10-2 team. I think that is it more likely to be 7-5 than 10-2? I don't think so. But I think more likely to be 8-4. So I'm on the over, but I'm sitting here being like, I think I'm kind of down on OU. And then I'm like, well, I'm on the over. So maybe not. I don't think this is a playoff team. I can start there and finish there. Daniel, we've made it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams into the SEC without talking about one of the 3 teams that has won SEC championships every year since 2010. The Alabama Crimson Tide. This is year 3 of Kalen DeBoer since Saban left. And I mean, my first thought is when I get to Alabama is, dude, people are stupid. This is Alabama. This is Alabama. Their recruiting classes the last 4 years have ranked second, third, second, and first. It's Alabama. At their best last year, they looked unbeatable. Kalen DeBoer, he's a winner. He's built winners as a coach. And Daniel, I start to peel the layers back on this team, man, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm too high on Alabama as I pull the layers back on this team. They in Pick Six previews, his game grader, like power rating formula, they fell to number 14, which is the lowest rating since 2007 as far as how good their team was. They were also 4-1 in one-score games, and their 38-3 Rose Bowl loss was the worst loss since 1998 for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Critical issues for me for Alabama, which again you hardly ever saw or never saw in a Saban team. Line of scrimmage play on both sides. And here's the thing, Daniel. Here's where I'm at with Alabama. This is year 3 of Kalen DeBoer. I'm going to need to see it before I buy in and believe it. I need to see Alabama be physical. Because here's the thing. That Washington offensive line was a physical offensive line that he built. Mm-hmm. I just haven't seen that at Alabama. I have not seen either side of the line of scrimmage be elite and hungry on either side of the line of scrimmage. It's just not been their identity under Kalen DeBoer. Offensive line was 118th in the country in offensive line push yards, and that was with 2 NFL draft picks starting on the offensive line. 3 of those players were all SEC. Number 118 in offensive line push yards. All the running backs averaged under 4 yards a carry. You lose your best one in Jam Miller. I need to see it before I believe that it's fixed. I came into my Bama preview, Daniel, saying this is a 10-2 or 11-1 team. Everybody's way too low on them. This is going to be a playoff team. It's going to be, Kalen DeBoer's a good coach. Everyone's going to be having Bama fatigue part 2 and saying, I can't believe we're letting them in again, even though they won 10 or 11 games. And I'll walk away thinking I was way too high. My first thought, defensive line play was bad last year. They have 1 starter back in their front 7s. Maybe that's a good thing that they kind of flipped the roster. And again, talented. Secondary is going to be elite. I have no question about the secondary. You could argue, as far as an entire defensive backfield, you could argue it's best in the country. It's top 3 if it's not. I think like them, Georgia, and Notre Dame are probably top 3. Oregon in that conversation. Top 4 defensive backfields in the country. Dijon Lee, Xavier Brown, who had 2 key pick sixes last year. Bray Hubbard at safety is an All-American. Keon Sabb. I think QB is going to be a strength. I have no questions. I think whoever starts at quarterback is going to be very good for Kalen DeBoer, whether it's 5-star Keelan Russell or Austin Mack, who's been in his system for 3 years. I think regardless, that's not even it is a question mark in that we don't know who's going to start. But to me, it will be a strength of the team. I'm a lot more worried about the offensive line and the offense who could not run the ball last year and the defensive line being physical enough in the front 7. This is a different brand of football than Nick Saban's Alabama. I believe in Kalen DeBoer. I really do. I think he's a really good football coach. And I think this is going to be a way different transition than anywhere else because other places are turning over coaches from fire coaches. No one else is taking over the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah.
And is a very different style of football coach and trying to install his brand. I do think Alabama fans need to be patient if they don't go to the playoff this year. Because I'm going over on the 8.5, but I think it's a 9-win team. I just think that schedule is very tough. It's where I'm down on Bama. I'm over on the win total, Daniel. It's where, and maybe I'm going to be wrong about all this, and there's just a bunch of 8-4 teams in the SEC, and, they all cannibalize each other. But again, the talent rosters are not, there's not the separation there used to be between Georgia and Alabama and everybody else, or even Georgia and Texas now and everybody else. It's all close. All these teams have good coaches. All these teams have talented players. I'm skeptical. Did they downgrade at every position -1 in the secondary from last year to this year? You could argue that. So I'm very skeptical, though I'm over on the win total at 8.5. I think they're 9-3. Don't think they're a playoff team. Don't think they're going to Atlanta.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. You also throw in Jeremy Bernard. I mean, maybe their best offensive playmaker last year specifically. There's a lot to like about this team. I think there's a lot of you mentioned Bama fatigue, and I think that it's also changing the framework of how you're thinking about them. the line of scrimmage is a problem. We're going to have to see that change for them to be successful. I don't know if losing these players is going to do that. You would hope that you're going to improve because they were not as good last year on line of scrimmage. We'll see. Remains to be seen. I will say, though, the schedule lightens up just a little bit. It feels okay. There's a stretch in the middle of the year where they have Georgia at home, they go to Tennessee, A&M at home, and then go to LSU. In those 4 games, are they going 0-4? Because I don't think that they are. I think that they're going to go 2-2, probably. They could go 1-3, but they've lost to Tennessee the last 2 times they've been in Knoxville. They beat Georgia every regular season, since 2007. Is that going to continue? They just lost to Georgia handily in the SEC championship. We will see what that unfolds. Obviously the at LSU game is going to be huge. A&M, it's just tough to discern. Like, if this was a Saban team, you can almost bet that how they were going to show up to those games under DeBoer. With this line of scrimmage situation, you don't know what's going to show up. I think they're going to score points in all of these games. Like, I think they're going to be a good offensive team. I think they're going to have moments on defense of being really good. Something to be said. They return all their coordinator. Kane Womack is back. Defense should be good. It is what it is. I'm interested to see what this team does. But yeah, I'm over, but it's just slightly like you are. I think that they're a 9-win team.
This is where when I look at the schedule, this was my first thought in Alabama. Was I look at the schedule and I identify those 4 games and say you split them as a 10-2 team. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, okay, yeah. that's where I'm starting when I'm looking at Alabama. And then you dig into the team and I'm like, okay, well, if there's that big of a question mark with running the ball, and I mean, South Carolina was a 1-score game last year. Oklahoma, they played in 2 1-score games last year. They beat Georgia on the road last year by a score. And I'm like, I'll even excuse that one of like, you weren't ready at all. You just didn't even get off the bus in that game. But yes, they lost to Florida State. Tennessee should have been a lot closer. They had the 99-yard pick 6 to kind of flip the game around. LSU was an 11-point game. Auburn, 1-score game. So it's not like they were blowing these teams out. I have questions, but I'm over it. It's Kalen DeBoer's a good coach. Would not surprise me at all if they go 10-2 or 11-1, but there's enough question marks for me picking it that I'm still over, but I think it's more likely they win 9 games than 10. So that's where I'm at with Alabama. Daniel, kind of the last tier on, I'll say, the universal tier 1 and 2 of the SEC. Mike Elko entering, is this year 3 or year 2?
This is year 3.
Okay, I was like, is it 1, 2, 3, or it's 2 or 4 or 3? he could be your 5 years. I don't know.
It's one of those numbers. Is this his first year there?
This is his first year. Year 3 for Mike Elko and the Aggies.
Yeah, man, Texas A&M, they are a mixed bag. Last year, starting out 11-0, you just start to have these narratives in your head as the year goes on because they're shaped by weekly College Game Day and different podcasts you listen to. Everybody's talking about different scenarios of making a playoff game and all this stuff, College Football Playoff Committee and all of this. And so start 11-0, you're always going to have, you get to the point where you're in the top 2 or 3 in the country and everybody's talking about you as one of the elite teams. Then you lose to Texas pretty handily. And then you look like you don't have a pulse against Miami, at least offensively. That's really concerning. The year before, they made the change from Connor Wegman to Marcel Reed. Last year, you had basically a whole year of him. And, he had moments where you're like, dude, this guy's special. I mean, the Notre Dame game comes to mind, 41-40. What a great game. They come back versus South Carolina. That was special. There's several games where you look at, but again, those are 2 1-point victories, okay? And then you look at the rest of this season as a whole. I think there's somewhat of an inflated. I mean, they barely beat Arkansas 45-42. LSU. I've got questions about A&M based off of their schedule last year. come in this year, Marcel Reed's one of these guys where I think he helps raise your floor. You were having an issue at having competent quarterback play. I think he gives that to you in, one of the best ways to do it, which is he's a quick one read guy, reads half the field, and then run, and you can run your offense through him by him being a threat in the run game, and it helps your running game. So Reuben Owens, I think, is going to have a big year. I like them defensively overall. Obviously, Elko being there is a big part of that. Losing Colin Klein as OC, I don't think is going to help you. I think he's one of the best risers in the sport. So him going over to Kansas State to go back home to be the head coach, I've got questions. So we'll see. I want to see if Marcel Reed's going to kind of take another step in development. If he does not, Jacob, I kind of think that they might have a high floor, but they've got a low ceiling.
I agree.
So looking at in the year at Texas or versus Texas again, obviously at Oklahoma the week before that, Tennessee is not going to be easy, at Alabama, at LSU. I mean, that's 5 games right there that are very tough for A&M. They're 8-5 or 8.5 wins is the win total. I'm slightly under. I like them at 8-4. I like, I think bottom falls out. They go 7-5. I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're very, very good. I think 8-4 is the most likely outcome for them based on a tougher schedule. And I think just kind of regressing back, like you talk about some of those 1-score games, those victories, I think that's going to be a tough spot. I think they're going to be able to have a good runway though. Missouri State, Arizona State, Kentucky, first 3 games. Then they play at LSU. That LSU game is going to be crucial for their season.
Yeah. Last year when they started 11-0, Daniel, they faced 7 of the bottom 9 SEC teams on that schedule before facing Texas. They draw 5 of the top 8 this year on the schedule. Yeah. So very different
look.
I'm out on Reed. I think he's hit his ceiling. To your point, I think we know what he is. Especially, I don't think he's going to get as big of a bump in year 2 because they're doing a double coordinator switch. First time Mike Elko's had to deal with that. And look, some like Lanning handled it fine the first time he's done it. This is the second time he's had to do it this year. So maybe Mike Elko handles it great, but having a guy like Colin Klein to help Marcel Reed develop and build an offense around, I think losing
continuity.
That.
Yep.
And dude, they had a school record of number of players drafted last year off that roster. So I think this will be a growing year for the Aggies and Mike Elko. I'm kind of like at the 8-4 mark with them. So that's kind of where I'm at with Texas A&M. Daniel, the only uniform update I'm going to cover for the SEC is that Texas A&M released some of the worst uniforms I've ever seen. And that I think
you're down on their uniforms for sure.
I took a win off when I saw those. Also, Texas A&M cosplaying as a service academy will never not be funny. Very, very funny. And Texas A&M doing it as a service academy. I think you can do a lot better things to honor the troops than wear horrific camo uniforms. And I don't know who needs to hear that, but looking at you, NC State, you're not going unscathed either. Those, even though it's black camo, it's still camo and it looks horrific. All right. Miami was horrible. Just enough of the Guess who can wear camo uniforms, Daniel? The Naval Academy, Army, Air Force. That's who should wear camo uniforms.
The only camo on Saturdays in the fall should be in a deer blind somewhere. It should not be on a football field. Okay, that's right. That's a take. We're sticking with it. We're not anti-camo. We're just anti-camo on the field. Look, okay, how about that?
That's fair. Like if you're wearing camo on the field, it better be a troop being honored. Of like, hey, check out this guy. Yeah. He served our country.
Or surprising his family.
Absolutely.
Those are great. That he's come.
But
thank you for your service. Do not make that into a football uniform, please.
Yeah, if it's a corner wearing a camo shirt and maroon shorts, pants, whatever, just know that I'm fully out on that. Texas A&M. So special shout out to A&M there. Daniel, win totals for the SEC. Let's go through all these. Alabama 8.5.
Both over, I believe.
Over,
we just
yeah,
said that,
I'm over as well.
I'll leave it to the people to listen to that part.
4.5.
I'm under.
Yeah,
I
me
don't
too.
think they're I mean, this is going to be a tough year. I don't think Ryan Silverfield's an inspiring hire. It is what it is. I think they got worse.
Full rebuild. Auburn, 6.5 for the Tigers.
I think that's an excellent line.
Same.
I know Vegas doesn't need us to give them flowers. I think that's an excellent line. I've got a lot of questions. They're trying to do the Indiana thing where they bring in a bunch of transfers from South Florida. Alex Golesh. I'm not out on Golesh. I think that he's obviously his first year, but I think we'll see over time. But year one's gonna be tough, and opening your game with Baylor that should have been at home in Atlanta instead. Bad juju
Vibes
there.
down. Yeah.
Because of that, I'm going slightly under. I do think they're a bold team. 6-6 is where I've got the War Eagle Tigers.
I am also at 6-6, but I'm going under. Florida, 7.5.
This one's fun. This is a good line. You'll hear us basically say that while we're buying time to see where we're going with them. But I like Florida. I don't like Florida, but I like that they've got. I know what you're going to talk about with Summerall with his uniform takes, but offensively bringing in Buster Faulkner, from my hot Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets last year. I was picking them all the time. I think that's a great hire offensively. I think bringing in Philo at quarterback, Singleton at receiver. You've got a lot of continuity of guys that they brought over. I think that's going to help. But, yeah, looking at this, you got Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida State. That's a win. I'm over. I think 8-4 Florida.
This is the other pick I flipped today, Daniel. I was at 8-4 and I went to 7-5. I think they could go not. I think they could go 9-3 or 5-7. I think it is
a fully 7-5. For the record, I don't want to be over on Florida. I'm with you, 7-5.
Dude, you're sticking it over, man. This is Gator Daniel is back.
No. 7-5.
I think they could go. I think they could go 9-3 or 5-7. I think they're extremely volatile. But I'm on the under. I'm pushed to under. I get to exactly 7.5 wins when I do it. Great line Vegas. You'll say that like 6 more times. Georgia, you and I both on the over. I think I get to 10.8 wins. I think it's an 11-win team.
Slam dunk over. When your floor is 10-2, you're always going to be over 9-5. Right.
That's right. Kentucky, you're one of Will Stein. 4.5.
I mean, they are one of the teams that gets devoured by the other teams. I think Will Stein is an inspiring hire.
Yeah,
I
same.
am in on him as a hire. You know what? 5-7. I'm going over.
That's where I'm at. I'm over. I'm at 5-7. I get to exactly 4.5. I'm pushed to over. I
Their
get
schedule
to 5-7.
lines up just right. Their vibes are up. 5-7.
If they hit on quarterback, this could be a bowl team.
They might get an invite to a bowl team from just people opting out of bowls. So
that's
they
true.
might slide in at 5-7. Who knows?
Yeah, this era sucks. LSU. LSU, I'm obviously on the over. In my purple and gold, I got the flag waving over here. 8.5, you over as well?
I went under, did I not? Did I say
you went under? I couldn't
before?
remember.
I'm trying to remember now. No, I'm over. I'm 9-3.
Yeah, I think you were 9. Yeah, that makes sense.
I was between 8 and 9, which is a great number, of course.
Jeff Lebby in the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Win totals 4.5, same as Kentucky and Arkansas.
Tough schedule, which is why this number is where it's at. But I'm going over. I think that they were a tough out last year. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but 5-7. I like Kamario Taylor at quarterback. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm also on the over. I get to 5-7 Mississippi State. They got a hit on QB. Same thing there with as Kentucky. Missouri. This is an interesting one, Daniel. 6.5. I think they could go win. I mean, I don't think they can win 9 games. I'm on the over, but 6.5 is the win total.
I'm concerned at how easy I am on the over with this team. Ahmad Hardy being back, stud running back, and then I think Austin Simmons is an improvement in the passing game. I don't know if he's an overall improvement over Bo Pribula because he's not going to run as proficiently, but I like him. Obviously, they have Zollers there as well. So I'm in on whoever the quarterback is. But this is a good team. The schedule's not too bad. I'm I'm at like 7-8 wins with Missouri. So yeah, definitely over.
Over. I am on the over as well. Yeah, I get to 7 wins there with Missouri. Oklahoma, we've already said we're both on the over at 7.5, even though we're down in Oklahoma apparently.
We love
over
Oklahoma.
On the win total.
We're both over. Both over.
Ole Miss, I think they're a playoff team at 10-2, so I'm on the over at 7.5. I think you're on the over at what, 8 or 9?
Yeah, I'm on the over for sure. I did say 8 or 9. I'm trying to get as much points as possible. So
South Carolina, really interesting team. 6.5 is the win total for the Gamecocks.
This could be the first coach fired.
Ooh.
They also could be. I mean, I was talking about today. They potentially have 3 first-round picks on their team. You know, if things go right. They have Georgia on the schedule at the end of the year. They play Clemson every year. At Florida, at Alabama. Do I believe? I haven't put a whole lot of thought into them. Are they 7-5? Anything less than 7-5, I think they get that Beamer gets canned.
Oh, I don't know.
I think he gets canned if they go anything less than 7-5. I'm going to go over. I think there's a bounce back of Sellers this year. I think we may be a year too early on it last year. So give me the over.
This is one of those, Daniel Kendall Briles comes in as offensive coordinator. KJ Jefferson, Lenore Sellers, I think that's a fair comp. Very successful with KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. That schedule is brutal.
It's tough.
I'm on the under. Maybe he does get fired. I don't know, man. I know it's year whatever, but 9-game SEC schedule. This is one of those. Like what is the number? Like, are you like pleased if he goes 8-4 versus 6-6? I don't know. I'm not a South Carolina fan. We'll have to, if you're a South Carolina fan, let us know. What's the number you want Beamer fired? Tennessee, 7.5. Daniel, what's the number at Tennessee?
Speaking of coaches that seem safe but are also being called on the hot seat, Josh Heupel. 7.5 is a good number. I'm over. I like their defense. Jim Knowles in as defensive coordinator. I think they're going to be able to run the ball really well this year. Greg, really good offensive line. I think they're going to set up whoever the quarterback is. And by the time they lose, 2 games, I think they'll have figured out who the quarterback is. And there'll be growth there, whether that is Faison Brandon, the elite 5-star freshman, or if it's George McIntyre, who's been on campus and doing his thing. I'm over on Tennessee. They get Georgia off the schedule. That's one more win for the Vols. And they get Bama at home. They love Bama at home.
So sorry, did you say over or under?
Over.
Yeah, I'm on the over as well. I think they get to at least 8 wins. Texas, I'm on the over. I think it's a playoff team. You're on the over as well. Texas A&M, we've talked about. Dude, their win total 8.5, which again, I'm on the under for Texas A&M.
Yeah, me too. I have them 8-4.
Vanderbilt, 10-2 last year, gets left out of the playoff. 5.5 the win total. Where you at on Vandy?
It's tough, man. They've got, their last 3 games, I think they go 0-3, Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee. I think they wish that they got Kentucky and Mississippi State at home. That's a tough draw because I think they're kind of on equal playing fields. I think they're going to beat the mess out of Arkansas. They're going to lose to Georgia, Ole Miss. I think they lose. They might lose at Auburn. I would think that they do. Yeah, I'm on the under.
Yeah, I'm on the under as well. I think there's going to be a full rebuild. The defense wasn't great last year, and you kind of had do-it-all Pavia. I don't think you're going to get that level of do-it-all of the offense out of Jared Curtis in year one. Talent, inexperience, defense. I just have a lot of questions. I'm on the under for Vanderbilt. Daniel, who goes to Atlanta and plays for the SEC championship game, and who's your winner at the end of the year for the Southeastern Conference?
Jacob, are you sitting down?
I'm sitting down.
Okay. I need you to just breathe slowly for me. It's going to be Georgia and Texas in the SEC championship. I can't quit. This is definitely going to be the two of them. I will say this is the first time I think that it might go the other way. You've got, as far as the actual championship, who's going to win? Will Muschamp, is he going to tip the scales in Texas's favor? Does that matter? Is it going to happen? I'm still taking the Dogs. But I do think that, I mean, like you said, they could have won all three of the games previously that were played. And it doesn't take much to tip those scales. It's a cultured thing rather than a talent thing. And I think that's going to change things. So I'm Georgia, but it's just slight. I think Texas is right there. I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm also Georgia over Texas. I will add that at some point during the process, I had Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, and Alabama, with 3 of those 4 being at 10-2, which means you have to go to like level 3 and 4 of the tiebreaker scenarios. I did have to do that. I did have Claude help me with this, and I did land on Texas. It came down to conference opponent winning percentage, which is the 4th tiebreaker. Nuts. But it could just be head to head. All this is going to play out. Georgia over Texas, but I have. Who's your dark horse? I'll say if it's not that, I think that's tier 1. If it's not one of those 2 teams, who's your pick?
Yeah, I think you have to. If you're giving me a lottery ticket, I'm going to take Ole Miss, just because of Trinidad Chambliss, and Kejuan Lacey. But I think you just take the bet, because the top 4 that we're not allowed to pick are Georgia, Texas, Alabama, LSU. For the record. Okay,
I'll say you can pick LSU or Alabama if you want. I was just putting the on the dock because that's a significant jump in odds to go from plus 330 to plus 800. You can pick either of those if you'd like.
I would take LSU then. Of those,
I'll take
higher on LSU than Ole Miss.
Man, I'm going back and forth. I think I'd go Ole Miss, but I'm right there. It's one of those 2 teams. I mean, again, those are my 4 playoff caliber teams: Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, and
I don't think
you're
wrong with either one of those as dark horse pick with LSU or Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss, you're essentially just, you're going to, hey, let's ride with the quarterback, see what happens. LSU, You're like, hey, they've got the defense and they figured out offense.
I love it. We did it. Conference
SEC
previews done. Next week, we will be picking the college football playoff. We've got a few fun ideas for our national preview episode, but we're going to pick our national champion, coach of the year, Heisman. We've got a few more fun ideas. I was looking at what you dropped in here, Daniel, because I was commenting back. Teams that will start, this is some fun AP stats. Teams that start in the top 10 will finish unranked. There's usually at least one. The opposite of that, teams that start unranked and will finish in the top 10. I've got my picks for both of those already. Full playoff picks. We go through conference champions. We will put a stamp on predictions, close the book, and then we're going to have real football games, which, again, you can pick with us using our Extra Picks app, which is down in the description below, where it says pick games with us. Click on there, fill it out, completely free to join. The top 3 will receive prizes. So don't miss out this season. Be a lot of fun. We'd love to get a bunch of you in there and pick games with us.
I mean, real quick, shout out Uncle Randall for the idea on the national preview. He was like, you've got to talk about teams that are going to finish unranked. It happens every year. I'm like,
yep.
All right, will do. He also, for the record, Uncle Randall is not high on Oregon. He doesn't like the double coordinator change for the 2nd time. So let the record show Randall out on Oregon.
All right, we'll see. We'll see what I pick next week, Randall. You might not like it. I am not high on Oregon. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Double negative. Heard.
Yeah,
yeah.
But lock in next week. We'll have that national preview, and then we'll talk real football games. Let's spot the ball, Daniel. Talking season's almost over. Let's spot the ball. Let's play some football. Be sure to follow us at the Extra Point Pod on Instagram. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. That'll do it for this edition of the Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob. See ya.